You've been released since 2019. It's 2024 as we're filming this. Since starting this organization, Give Back to the Block, how many shootings have you been on the scene of?
I've been on the scene of over 100 or something, but I've actually physically seen about 87 to 88 dead bodies.
All right, let me begin this by saying that it is an absolute pleasure to get the opportunity to meet you. Darrell Redmond, a huge name in Portsmouth, Virginia, for the work that you're doing in the local community with the youth advocation of stopping the violence. You're an individual who served a lot of time in prison. You've come home from prison in 2019, and since then you've started an organization in this city called Give Back to the Block. If you wouldn't mind, would you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit of your backstory?
As you said, my name is Darrell Redmond. I am the founder and CEO of Give Back to the Block. A little about me. I am an individual that was born and raised in the city of Portsmouth. I grew up in underprivileged communities, born and raised in London Oaks community. Was born to when I was 1 year old. My mother was addicted to drugs, so I went to live with my father. Lived with my father till around 12 years old. At 12, woke up one morning. My father said he couldn't see, so like, what's going on? And come to find out, my father had diabetes. And cataracts had got in, which started to affect his sight. Mind you, I was a young kid growing up in a community that school was my outlet. So school became my outlet. So always very educated, honor roll student my whole life. And where some people saw school as a place that they didn't want to go to, school was my escape. It was when I came back and got out of school, the problems plagued. The joking about my mother because she was addicted to drugs. Talking about my father because he had went blind. When I was young, I had a real bad speech impediment, so I used to stutter a whole lot. So a lot of those factors, not understanding how to deal with and process that type of trauma, led me into becoming angry with myself that I understand now. That I was reacting with a lot of negativity, such as fighting, getting in communities, being disruptive, being disputive, that I went from a chain of events from juvenile detention starting at 13 years old to going to prison at a very young age and spending over 2 decades incarcerated.
If you don't mind me asking, and if you don't mind sharing, how much time did you do in prison and what were the charges that you served time for?
I spent approximately 25 years incarcerated. I went to prison for robbery, gun charge, I had a shooting charge, I had drug charges, falsifying documentation. I actually had charges in 4 cities.
You do 25 years in prison, you go to prison at a young age. I can imagine that while in the system, you were probably still carrying on with the violence and the lifestyle of being a young guy in prison, probably being thrown to the wolves and having to adapt to a situation that was maybe even worse than what it was like for you in the streets. What was your prison experience like? Were you still disruptive in prison? Were you getting into trouble, fighting, and being involved in, the negative aspects that prison can be?
Being truthful and honest like I always am. When I was sentenced, I was already in the jail. I was already disruptive in the jail, fighting, doing different things like that because I was upset. I remember getting my time, being found guilty on jury trial, and going back and sleeping for like 2 to 3 days because I couldn't fathom the time that they was talking about. Mind you, I'm thinking the world gonna blow up in 2000. So when you talking about the mid 90s and you seeing a date that you can't even fathom, I literally lost it mentally. So I slept for about 2 to 3 days in the jail. I remember I ain't eat, I ain't do nothing, I ain't want no trades, I ain't want nothing. But that 3rd or 4th day that I woke up, I just went on a turn spree. It was, if you weren't with me, then you against me. And it was gonna be my way, and I had already had it in my mind that I was gonna do this time the way that I wanted to do this time. I had a grandmother who loved me to death that was so worried about me, and I just always promised to her, I'm gonna come out the same way I went in. And I had already knew what prison was like, but I had never been. But leaving from that jail and going to Mecklenburg, I remember that ride. A lot of people were sleeping. I was up the whole time, and all I kept saying to myself on that ride was, first person try to do something to me, I'm gonna kill him. Some of you may be asking, why do I say that? And for the ones who don't know, just Google Mecklenburg Correctional Center. Mecklenburg was one of the most dangerous prisons in the state of Virginia. It was actually a prison that one of the brothers I met that was part of one of the biggest escape from Mecklenburg. That's what y'all may know that video as, Escape from Mecklenburg. It was some people that escaped from that institution, but it was a very violent institution. And I remember getting to Mecklenburg, getting into that gate, and when that gate closed, it felt like death. Like everything like just shut down. And I remember going in, getting my property, going to a cell. I got there, it was like summertime, so it's scorching hot, no air conditioning, it's real hot. Walking in, just hearing gates slamming and things like that. And I just remember just getting in the pod, dropping my stuff off in the cell and walking back in the pod, just standing around like contemplating violence. Who gonna say something to me? Who gonna try me? So I went in there with a mindset already brewing like a powder keg. That led to a few instances back then. It was a big thing with Tidewater, Richmond, Northern Virginia. I remember I was at Mecklenburg probably about a month. We was on the yard and we got to fight with some Richmond guys. Tidewater, Richmond got to fighting, and that was my first time really seeing how it go down. When I thought it was going to be fights, I started seeing a whole bunch of knives and shanks and different components like that, locking the sock, and people hitting people with adapters and things like that. And that's when I said, okay, it's real. So went from that to left Mecklenburg, went to Southampton, which was back then called Gladiator School, which a lot of the younger people went to Southampton, older people went to Powhatan. But when you get there, most of the time, as soon as you get there, like I was saying, it was a experience there that I was there a few months and seen somebody in the process of somebody trying to rape them, stab them, and he jump off a 3rd floor tier. So watching somebody fall to their death to escape somebody trying to take their manhood just added to that already mindset that was contemplating violence. So right after that, meeting my uncle that was there that actually said, "You gonna need this," and put a knife in my hand. So it's very similar to what we dealing with now with people putting guns in their hand, because it was like, if I'm in a situation that somebody has been in here, my uncle had been in there then for probably about 20 some years, and if he put a knife in my hand, he pretty much telling me that this is what you need to survive. So I started to survive.
You do 25 years in prison. There is a point in time, there has to be a point in time where you change from this very violent nature to thinking about getting released and doing something different with your life. What was the moment or time when change started to happen for you while you were in prison?
It's sad to say, and a lot of people wouldn't believe that it's truthful, but from the moment I was sentenced, I wanted to change. I wanted better. But my environment and my conditions wouldn't allow me to change. Because I started seeing people that was trying to change that was being taken advantage of. But my change really came when I was involved in a stabbing, and I was actually put in solitary confinement for a long period of time. And in that time frame that I was in solitary confinement, it was the moment that I found me. So I want to paint a picture to get you to understand what I'm saying. It's like being put in a vicinity of a whole lot of people, which we know that prisons have all of these people. So you're dealing with hundreds, Greensville, thousands of different personality and mentalities every single day where you don't have the moment to process your own. So you have to be contemplating what everybody else is doing and in your mind playing chess to be 4 or 5 steps ahead. But being in solitary confinement is what I found myself, because that was the first moment in my life that I had time to myself, to reflect on myself and look at myself. So when I first went to solitary confinement, yeah, I was still being rebellious, still kicking the doors, still throwing stuff on officers. And then I'm just sitting back reading and started to understand that I created every situation that I was dealing with. The only person that could change me was me. So it was one morning that I woke up and looked in the mirror and say, you blaming everybody else, but you the problem. So being able to have that time to myself, which some people may put it towards, like if you're religious, of how Moses went up into the mountains by himself to get away. So I was able to get away and reflect and see myself and say, you better than this. I had a grandmother who used to always tell me that you're going to be okay, you're going to get out of here, it ain't going to be that long. But where there's 24 hours in the street that don't seem like enough time, 24 hours in prison seems like too much time. So it was that moment inside solitary confinement that I found myself, because I was able to then be by myself and start processing some of those conversations that people was having with me inside prison. Because people was telling me, man, you ain't got to do this. You ain't got to do this. You got the old heads that we call them in prison, that I went from being the youngin that was listening to old heads that became the old head that was talking to the youngins. But what I learned in there was a camaraderie of people who wanted better for you. And those people that wanted better for me, I had to be put in a position where those same conversations can continue to echo inside my head. And that's when I came out and said, you know what, I'm going to do different.
How long do you spend in isolation? And when you come out, talk to us about what it's like immediately when you come out wanting better for you.
I spent over 4 years in isolation. And coming out was coming out to a different world. Because when you're dealing with those Sussex, Red Onions, Wallen Ridge, it's not a physical incarceration, it's a mental incarceration. And when you went there in those conditions, in those strenuous, harsh conditions, and then being let out, it's so ironic because now I talk about it a lot. And it's kind of funny to me because when we incarcerated, we are already in jail. But it's a concept that we'll say, I ain't trying to go to jail. But we already incarcerated.
Talking about going to the hole.
Going to the hole, right. But that mentality to even being able to, that I understand now, is that we as people that's been incarcerated have to trick ourselves to be able to stay conditioned with the situation, because we saying that we free. And that's deep. But coming out of that confinement for so long, it was scary. Because I went into solitary confinement and isolation and all of those major institutions, as I said, when it was a period of Tidewater, Richmond, Northern Virginia, DC. When I came out of solitary confinement, I heard people talking about Suwoo, cracking. I'm like, whoa, where did this come from? So I left from an era where it was divided by the cities you stayed at, to I came out of the hole, people talking about they were gang members. And I'm like, hold on, you been in the penitentiary with me, how you a blood? How you a Crip? How you a GD? MS-13, they been in there. That type of stuff been in there. But I came out of there to a whole nother world that people coming in the pod and you trying to use the phone, they talking about that's the blood phone. I'm like, what do you mean that's the blood phone? You gonna die behind that phone. Or there's a Crip. So I came into a whole nother world, but I'm glad I had that time to myself to be able to sit back and evaluate, but I had already had enough respect for myself to be able to still navigate, but I started watching how the whole prison system started to turn around. And part of that is how I really got harder on my structure, because I was like, ain't no way I'm gonna do this. Ain't no way. We in here and you got a guy that's in here that's 19 years old talking about he the big homie, and somebody I've been in here with 10 years following him and he 19 years old. Man, come on, man. When does this make sense? So it became a situation of having to understand navigation, how to navigate a system and still be okay, but at the same time, you still got to stand your ground.
You serve 4 years in isolation. You come out to a totally different world. There's gangs now running phones and running the prisons. You're trying to do better for yourself. Are you able to do that? How were you able to do that? If so, can you talk about that a little bit?
It was pretty easy to navigate, because what's funny about the situation is that a lot of the people that was supposed to have been the OGs or the big homies, they were people that we already knew. So I'm like, how you a blood and me and you just been in here 15 years together, you ain't never been in the street, but then you triple OG, or you know what I'm saying, you running this whole gang or running this whole set. So it was funny for real, because I saw it as people that was in those positions was able to utilize that to manipulate other people. I've been asked to get in that type of stuff a million times. Like, bro, like, man, get out of here. You, first of all, you know that ain't me. I'm not gonna be responsible for none of you, and you definitely ain't gonna tell me what to do. So I'm gonna navigate how I want to navigate. But so it was pretty easy to navigate, but it was hard seeing some of the people that I knew, some of the people that I dealt with, that didn't have a strong enough presence being taken advantage of. So it started me starting to do the same advocacy I do now then, because I started creating spaces. Like when it was the phone and everybody had a phone, I started saying, I got my phone. So for the people who couldn't use a phone, you can use my phone, because I always believe that everybody should be treated equally. And I'm a type of person that I don't like bullies. So if you're a bully, I'm gonna try to bully the bully. I don't like people that being taken advantage of. So those people that was being taken advantage of, if you felt like you the bully, then I want to have a conversation with the bully. Put me up with the bully. So that was able to help me be able to navigate and manage, which put me in positions to like fully start my whole transition.
It's really interesting what you mentioned right there. You're in prison wanting to really put in motion these changes for yourself, these more positive changes after all of this time in isolation. And it's sounding like you're doing advocacy work that begins for you while you're serving time. While you're serving this time and doing this, trying to help talk to guys who may be having a tough time in prison, does it start to register with you that you want to come home and continue on this path?
I wanted to come home and help people. How I was going to help them, I didn't know the capacity. I seen a lot of the people that when I was given a chance to come home, I knew some people in there that deserve a chance better than me. So when they gave me an opportunity, one of my number one things I said to myself was that I wasn't going to mess up the opportunity for somebody that's still in there that deserves a chance better than me. My record in prison is not good. I know people with a more exceptional record than me. And that's what led me to the path of continuing to advocate for those people, but I knew that I had to hold myself at a certain regards and standard in order to be able to attest to them being able to have the same opportunity that they had given me.
That is a really powerful statement right there. You get released with an opportunity to come out here, and you know that there's people who are still in prison right now that haven't had that same opportunity, and you know that what you do out here could somehow affect them. Hey, we're giving parole to folks, but some of those folks may not be successful given those opportunities. You recognize that you being successful given an opportunity with parole could potentially affect somebody else's eligibility making parole. You wanted to be a part of the solution and not the problem, and a part of the positive statistic, it certainly sounds like. I want to switch gears and move to you being released. What happens that causes you to start Give Back to the Block? Was it coming home and seeing a lot of violence in the city? Like, was there one specific incident?
Ironically, I was released from prison June 10th, 2019. My family didn't even know I was coming home. I was picked up by my fiance. So I went and saw my grandma, and I told her to take me. I went and saw my kids. They were shot. So then I wanted to go see my mom. So my mom still lives in London Oaks now. So the neighborhood that I grew up in, not too far from here. When I was pulling up and I saw the community that I was raised in, I said, hold on, what's that? They were like, that's London Oaks. And they had a gate around it. Soon as I saw it, it immediately reminded me of prison. Immediately. I said, hold on, my neighborhood got a fence around it. And I seen how she was driving to get in, because I brought her through the back way, Virginia Avenue, I know that, but that was blocked off. I'm like, hold on. So she said, look, it ain't number 2 ways in. I said, hold on. And I told her verbatim, I say, that seemed like a prison rec yard. She was like, huh? I said, the rec yard got 2 gates, in and out in prison. I said, why do they got the neighborhood? So I go see my mom, I'm talking to her, and she say, baby, this community different. She was like, sometimes I don't even want to come outside. That was June 10th. I said, Mom, I'm going to take me a few days to myself. So I went to the beach for 2 days. I stayed there the 10th and the 11th. June 12th, I was back in the community. I said, if my mama don't feel safe out here, then I know I have to do something for this community. If not, I may wind up back in prison.
You know, I want to paint the picture for those who may not know this neighborhood that you're talking about. London Oaks, it was a couple of years ago. I can't remember exactly how many years at this point, but I remember when they put that fence up. It was on the news that they were putting this fence up. There was controversy behind that. I can't remember exactly what the justification for putting this fence up was, but London Oaks developed this bad reputation of being a very violent neighborhood. You come home from prison, this is where you're from, your mother telling you she doesn't feel safe here, you see it looking just like a prison. This is what causes you to want to start doing some work in the community.
Yes, immediately. So I started out there just walking through, talking to people, trying to find out who people was. Some of the guys I knew because they had been out there. What's ironic is when they say sometimes nothing changes after being going over 2 decades, some of the same people I knew, but a lot of the kids I didn't know. But my brother was familiar out there, a lot of my cousins, so I'm talking to them. So I'm finding out a lot of these kids, I know their mom, or I know their dad, or I know their grandmama. So I started talking to them, and they started to say, it's different. So I'm like, what's going on? So when I started walking through, I walked through when I was out London Oaks growing up. We had a basketball court, we had a pool, it was playgrounds, it was all of that. So when they walking me through it, all of this stuff gone. So I'm like, what's going on? So they were like, they took everything from us, ain't nothing to do out here no more. So that's what made me ask the question about the gate. And to answer that question, I found out they said that they put the gate up there, which is something that I still advocate for now, because as you said, they said that it was a violent community. So what did they do? They treated it like a prison. They put a gate around it because they say that we're going to keep all that confined into one space. So they created a powder keg. And they say we have to keep this boxed off, and that's why they put the gate up. But it just put me into action. And then it was a lot going on in the different communities out here. So I got to talking to one of my partners, one of my longtime friends from London Oaks. And I said, man, let's do something. He said, man, we can do something. And he was like, yeah, we're going to do an event. So start putting it together. My cousin is LaShawn Merritt, who is the 400-meter medalist. And she was still running track then. So I was like, look, when you finish with track, I'm trying to do an event. He was like, all right, I'll be available August the 10th. I said, wow, August the 10th? I said, I came home June the 10th. So I was telling people I was going to do this community event. And people kept saying, you can't do this community event because all the neighborhoods shooting each other. So I say, I beg to differ. Not saying that I'm this type of person, but I'm a type of person who know how to bring people together. And we did a big event at J.E. Parker Community Center August the 10th, where we actually brought in, we had over like 300, 400 people from the community, all different neighborhoods together, having this conversation and kids being able to move around peacefully. And mind you, I've been home 60 days. And people started saying, we need more of this. At that time, I was working at an HVAC place doing HVAC work. So I'm a Universal Certified HVAC mechanic as well. But I remember being at work one day, putting a flue pipe up through the ceiling. And they sent me to do this job by myself. And I put a flue pipe up. It probably took about an hour and a half, 2 hours. And I write an invoice for $1,100. I remember calling my fiance right then to say, I said, when I leave here today, I ain't going back. She said, huh? I said, man, these people pay me $22 an hour. I just went and did some work for $1,100 and they gave me $44. I said, I'm worth more than that. My time is. I left there that day, came home, and I just fully got engulfed in doing community work. And as I say, I just believe that the higher power will guide you if you be humble enough to sit down and allow it to move you. As you say, I didn't go in prison starting to want to do advocacy. I just seen injustice with people and wanted to do it. With me, I understand that some people want to see you win and thrive, but believe it or not, a lot of people don't. And what I know is that hurt people hurt people. And if you aren't able to express that hurt, express that pain, being able to have a safe space to have that type of conversation, then you're a ticking time bomb. And from being inside that system so long, it's designed to make us continue to snap, to not be able to be functional inside our communities, inside our homes, inside society. And I always been a black sheep. So I always went against the grain. But going against the grain, people would label the black sheep as being the sheep that isn't important. But for the listeners here, even if you look up military structure and everything, there's an important person in any arena, and it's called a disruptor. That's the person that even if the general say, oh, let's need to go this way, the disruptor may say, hold on, I ain't going. Because it's something that the general overlooked. Because the general doesn't always have the insight of the ground. He may have the oversight of the view. So being able to understand that the black sheep can understand the ground because he navigated it. And with me seeing those type of pain and hurt, I grew up with a loving grandmother who teach love, compassion, and things like that. So that's already been innate in me. So wanting better for people is something that I always wanted. So to be able to help somebody and see them thrive, it gives me more gratification. Me seeing somebody come out of a situation and become successful, that's satisfying to me, because a lot of people like us aren't given an opportunity. I've came home now and gained all of my rights back. I got all of my rights. I was in a situation not too long ago that the people are asking me, would you like your record expunged? And to be honest, when I first thought about getting my record expunged, I said, yeah. But then I sat back because I'm a prayer and I'm a meditator. And God told me don't do it. And the reason why he told me don't do it was because the people that I'm trying to help and change, that stock of felonies I got, that's my resume. That's what gets me into those rooms. If I expunge it, my resume don't look like that. We as people have been designed to make our resume look like the world says my resume has to look. And I know that a person with a clean resume couldn't help and change me. So why would I want to change mine? Being able to walk in there with those stock of felonies with that F beside my name validates me in the work that I'm trying to do. So I got a degree that's needed to help create change.
Powerful is all I can say in relation to what you just shared right there. You've started Give Back to the Block. I live in the same city with you. It was me seeing you on the news, I guess every time that there's a shooting involving a juvenile in the city of Portsmouth, you're there. You've been released since 2019. It's 2024 as we're filming this. Since starting this organization, Give Back to the Block, how many shootings have you been on the scene of?
I've been on the scene of over 100 or something, but I've actually physically seen about 87 to 88 dead bodies.
You know, what does that do to you? You know, this is the city that you grew up in. This is the city where your family's from. This is a city that you were gone from for 25 years because you were in prison, and in prison where you found the change to come home and want to help be a part of the change. You've seen over 80 dead bodies. Are these all juveniles?
At least 80. Some of them, I still say juveniles because I deem anybody under the age of 21 pretty much a juvenile. But yes, because right now in the United States of America, black kids between the ages of 12 and 24, the number one cause of death is gun violence. So when they categorize that, that's the fraction of people that I deal with. And inside that fraction, that's mainly that number. And it's horrific. Sometimes people may see me and some may deem that I'm unapproachable, which is the biggest lie that's ever told. Someone would say that I am aggressive, biggest lie that's ever told. Some would deem me to be unpredictable. That's a fact. But what it is that until you become disgusted with a situation like I am, you aren't going to react the way that I react.
Talk to us about you going to these crime scenes where a life has been taken because of gun violence. You know, like I said, when I first became familiar with you, it's me seeing you on the news. You know, when a murder takes place in this city, you know, who's calling you? Is it the police that call you, or are you just hearing about this because your
The
ears
community calls me.
The community calls you.
Because I've been doing this so much and they have so much trust and faith and know that if I do something, I'm doing it. They know that who's really here to help. You know how, because of the history of things, people call who they need or who's important at a most immediate situation. If it's an emergency, I know who I'm gonna call because who's gonna come to help. And what's happened is that the community calls me because I am the 911. They feel as though that they're going to get a better sense of help, a greater response from somebody who actually shows up and cares. And that's why they call me.
You say the communities who calls you, when you get there, what do you do when you get there?
First of all, when I get there, what I do, I pretty much assess what's going on. Most of the times when I'm on my way there, I done already got the call, so I pretty much know who it is or who is affiliated with or whatever the case may be. Sometimes I get the call that I don't know, but when I get there, the first thing it's doing is to make sure everything is okay. Understand that we have families grieving right now. We got tension going on, and what is it that I can do to de-escalate? I've been trained in violence intervention and violence reduction, so I understand those evidence-based practices and measures that's used to de-escalate those scenes. So to be able to get people away from looking at that trauma and continue to watch that trauma. And it's one scene that actually stays with me, and actually it was a scene that I was called to. This scene, I didn't know who it was. It said it was a club that was in Portsmouth and somebody was shot inside the parking lot. So I hurry up and get there. When I get there real fast. I get there and I'm looking, and when I see the body, I said, bro, it can't be him. So I walk back for a minute and I look around because I'm trying to survey the area, and I see the car. I said, bro, like, it can't be him. So I go over there and look, we face down. Then the police came, they pulling us all back. I get a call probably 2 minutes after I was pulled back from there from my daughter. And my daughter said they just killed Pape. Pape is actually my grandson's father.
Your grandson's father?
That's my grandson's father. It's my daughter's baby father. So mind you, I'm at a crime scene trying to help navigate this crime scene, but got to deal with and comfort my daughter who pulls up, hollering, screaming, going crazy. And in the process of my daughter right there mourning, I'm trying to make sure the scene okay. She got her cousins. Somebody sends my daughter a TikTok with him dead on the ground. It's different. It's different.
You're out in the community. You've been released from prison since 2019. You've been out here for 5 years now. You've been making major waves in trying to stop the violence, put the guns down, give back to the block. Do you feel like the work that you're doing out here is making a difference? And if so, how?
I know it's making a difference. The reason why I know it's making a difference because that same community that we was talking about earlier, London Oaks, that was one of the most highly infected communities in Portsmouth with violence. After going in there, after I came home, I left. I went to Chicago, LA, when I got trained in a lot of this violence reduction. Was able to come back to that community, and we sustained an 18-month no shooting inside that community. We was actually awarded on a national level by a national organization, Cities United. That's a gun violence organization nationwide, and we was one of the 10 organizations that was awarded for prestigious work with reducing gun violence inside communities. I've housed kids inside my house that houses have been shot up. I had one of the kids I mentor whose brother was murdered off the school bus that went through some psychological traumas that was able to put him inside my house and allow them to be in there and to see kids thrive inside a different environment, I know that the work is essential. I know that the work is working, because I get the ones who call me now and say, I wanted to do X, Y, Z, but it's not. Or I get the ones that's out when certain situations are happening and calling me and saying, man, can you come get me? Because I tell the kids all the time, if you need me to be your excuse, I'll always be it. You can call and say, man, you know, Unc said such and such and such and such. Or you can text me if you in a situation and say something. I'll call your phone and be like, where you at? Because I'm about to come get you. I'm going to make sure that you're okay. So getting those calls, being able to talk to these shooters, killers, and pill poppers. And them saying, man, I don't even want to do this no more, but how can you help me? Because these are the people who have never had a voice. These people who haven't been given an opportunity. They've been taken advantage of by opportunists who get in front of them and say, I'm going to help you, but I'm only going to lead you as far as it can help me. And then I let you go. And then I'm able to go inside of notes that I wrote on you and said, I tried to help him, but he became rebellious. So this work is essential, because at the moment that you let him go, it's the moment that we pick him up. And it's the moment that we continue to advocate for that person who doesn't know how to advocate for themselves, because we all deserve the same thing. We all want the same thing. And it's something that I always say when we're talking about gun violence and people talk about war. Our kids are living in a war right here in their own communities. There's a study that has been done and shows that I can get you 10 military soldiers and I can get you 10 kids between the ages of 14 and 17. And those kids between the ages of 14 and 17 have experienced more trauma with gun violence than we got trained people inside the military. But we don't want to address post-traumatic prison disorder inside communities. Now we want to start to revisit and look at it. But when we just did a study with me and my partner Fitz with some kids, 3 kids live in the same household, and they got to arguing because one said they don't hear gunshots, the other one said they heard it sometime, and the other one said they heard it all the time. And I told them it happens all the time. But what is that? There's 3 people in the house that 2 of them became so desensitized that sometime when I heard it ain't even nothing. When did we get to that point? So the work is essential because people's voices need to be heard. Everybody wants to be safe, and we can't continue to feed people what we want them to eat, not understanding their appetite.
I want to go ahead and wrap this up. We've shared a lot in this, and I hope that this is seen by the masses so that people can get a better understanding of who you are, your backstory, and what you're doing in this local community. But as we do so, I want to ask, what more could help you to do more?
First of all, I challenge anybody from anywhere in any city, any country, get involved, because gun violence now has been deemed a public health crisis. So when you talk about diabetes, when you talk about heart failure, when you want to talk about high blood pressure, now you have to have the conversation about gun violence. And if they deem it a public health crisis, that means that it can come to your doorstep. And just as any public health crisis, if you don't do nothing preventive, then what are you doing? Because it's going to hit you. It doesn't have to hit you directly. It can hit you indirectly. So what's needed is for you to get involved, first of all, inside your community, inside your city, but start inside your household. Because education inside your household helps it when it get outside of there. And you can always connect. We do a lot of training. So if you are somewhere near or far that wants to be trained in gun violence intervention, to understand what are ways to intervene in gun violence, how can you be involved in gun violence, what are the numbers and statistics, how to become a violence interrupter, what is a credible messenger, what is an ecosystem that's wrapped around that can help decrease violence inside your community. And I want you listeners to understand that gun violence isn't just for underserved communities. If you're a business owner, you need to know about gun violence more than the people that's inside communities. Because it's people that's inside those communities that your crime in your community may not be murder, but your crime rate of burglaries and things like that are higher than those communities. Because it's the people that leave from these communities and come burglarize your communities to help take care of their communities. So it's how do we work together with an ecosystem collectively to do it. You can always reach out to us, givebacktotheblock.org. That's GIVEBACK, the number 2, DABlock.org. I'm on Facebook, Darrell Redmond, DARRELLREDMOND. We take any type of volunteers, we take any type of donations, we take any type of support, we take any type of anything that you need, but we meet you where you are.
You know, I greatly appreciate the opportunity to be able to introduce you to the audience of After Prison Show, and also hopefully to the masses. You are a major positive figure in this local community, Portsmouth, Virginia, and I hope that this gets you in front of a lot more eyes so that people can see who you are, what you've been through, and what you're doing now. It's been a pleasure to get the opportunity to speak with you. And as we wrap this up, I ask, do you have any parting words?
Yes. I would like to leave y'all with something that I believe is monumental and instrumental. Hurt people hurt people. And until we understand inside our communities how to address underlying trauma, we stuck. We live in communities where we don't even understand how to express ourselves, so it comes out violent. So we need to take some time. Every listener, I challenge you to just see somebody you don't know, speak to them, and ask them how their day was. That may be the key factor in changing their life. Thank you, Mr. Get Back to the Block himself.